So we're gonna start in the tail and do our baseline, just like we did in our initial session. And I'm just going to whip toward me one direction in the skin. I'm not doing reciprocal movements this time because I don't need to create a stronger baseline. My baseline is already there. I just want a little bit more saturation. Just look at that saturation there, and I can see it. And so that tells me that my hand speed and my deposit is working. So I'm just gonna keep doing the same thing, whipping toward myself, only putting the needle in the skin one direction. I'm whipping about 4 to 5 times before I overlap by 50%. My pinky is stabilizing and creating a stretching point. My pointer in this hand, my thumb in this point, on this hand are also creating stretching points. You will always want your 3-point stretch. When you get to the end, the bulb of the brow, you're still just going to use that same whipping motion. Okay, so now that we've done the baseline, we're going to move to the top line, starting at the tail and whipping one direction toward yourself again. And I'm not going over 4 to 5 times on the top because I don't want the top to be as solid as the bottom line. So I'm going over maybe twice before moving to my next section, overlapping by 50%. Now you can wipe and your outline is more defined and you can move on to your first touch-up pass. So I'm going to whip shade toward myself in this tail, just redefining it a little bit from baseline to top line. I'm going to turn up my machine a little bit. I usually work at 5 volts with a whip. What I'm doing is I'm going in each section and filling in where I need to fill in, and then moving on to the next section. So now I'm going to overlap this section again by 50% like we did the first time, just whipping toward me. With a touch-up, there are certain spots that I do not want to go over. Some areas through here are saturated enough, but I know that the bulb is not saturated enough. So that's where I'm going to start my tattooing. I'm filling in the gaps. So I'm going to work from my baseline and I'm going to whip toward myself, doing the first pass. Remember, we're whipping in the bulb to create that powdery, soft transition. Now I'm going to go over this about 2 to 3 times back and forth from baseline to top line with your whip. Okay, I've already done her right side. I switch over and I actually sit on the left side to do her left side. Some people do both brows from one side. I just like to do each brow on each side. So my body position is always in the direction my machine is moving. My body is in line with the machine. If I'm pulling this direction and my body's over here, I'm not going to be able to get a good swing. Pulling this direction and my body's here, you just want to be in line to guide your hand. When we come in to tattoo on our touch-up, there may be certain spots that are more saturated that don't need touching up. So what you're gonna do is kind of assess that as you're mapping. And for her, I do want my baseline to be a little more saturated. So I am gonna go over it lightly, my baseline and my top line. I feel like they both could use a little more saturation. So just like your initial appointment, we're gonna start with the baseline. At the tail, we're going to whip toward us, toward yourself. So for the initial appointment, I used reciprocal movements starting here for the rest of the baseline, but today I'm just gonna keep whipping because I don't want that much more saturation. And the whip gives you lighter saturation. And I'm keeping my 3-point stretch, my pinky here, pointer here, thumb here to keep that skin nice and taut. So I'm going over each section about 4 to 5 times before I move on and overlap the next section. And then I'm gonna move to the top line. So moving to the top line, I'm going to whip again, but I'm only gonna go over maybe 2 to 3 times to keep it light and airy. My speed is usually at around 5 volts when I'm whipping. Your machine speed needs to match your hand speed, and we talk about this in another video. But if your machine is moving at a low speed, or your machine is running at a low speed, then your hand movement needs to be slow. This is about a medium speed.
If you're thinking that I need to be shown, I respect your admiration, but I'm doing just fine on my own. With an eye on every girl, right to left. Next thing I know, I'm the one that's next. No need to flex. Next thing I know, I'm the one that's next. With an eye on every girl, right to left. Next thing I know, I'm the one that's next. No need to smile, no need to flex. Don't want your number, no need.
So the end of her tail, I don't need to go over, but I can see a spot in here that I want to go over. So I'm going to whip shade this area like we did in our initial session. Whip shading one direction toward me. So I just finished the first pass and I used my secondary numbing cream to numb her again, kept it on for about 30 seconds to a minute, and I'm gonna wipe away and see what else we need to fill in. Areas we just need to touch up a little bit. I'm gonna use a whip shade just to complete the brow, make sure the saturation has smooth, seamless transitions.